Okay, so Atlas Core experience, I would say, was like it's like one of the most different experiences I ever had until now. Um, I came here with a lot of expectations of learning, of doing something really great, learning a lot, understanding a different culture, and I would say like the overall experience over the past 1 year has has basically crossed all my expectations. Um, it's crossed beyond, toppled over, went like further down what I could think of. Um, it's been a lot of learnings as all of the fellows had shared with each other. It was like staying with each other, starting from that to being in a different organization, working globally with lots of different offices. So the overall intake was huge. It was like so enormous. Sometimes I was like, I should just go back. I don't want to do it anymore. Um, I, Sometimes it was like overnight working, thinking, what really am I doing here? So it's been intense, just in one word. It's been really intense. Um, so I just want to share like briefly 3 learnings which I think were like really important in my life. Being out here, understanding what's going on here. The first one, um, just to like say what happened to me was, it's very similar to what Atlas Core's tagline is. It represents exactly the same thing. Atlas Core tagline basically says change your perspective and change the world. And that's what has happened with me out here. The overall perspective has like totally changed. Like starting from coming out here, living in a different environment, in a very different neighborhood than what we experienced in India. Um, Living with fellows from different countries, understanding all these different cultures, the overall experience, and like it's like I would say the whole thing is like a bubble in your head, and it when you come out here and be in this kind of a situation or an environment, the whole bubble like expands like 20 feet beyond. So you can see like how you were thinking earlier in this way, and suddenly it expands in all different directions to like really huge. So your thinking and your outlook changes tremendously. Um, I had like notions of how things work back in India. Things have totally changed after I've worked out here. So uh, I would also say I used to think I could probably travel to US anytime and learn more about it. Uh, but I think living out here is very different than actually traveling. Being out here, being in those challenges day in and day out, make you and like I would say carve you in such a way that you can take over those challenges. So I believe like this kind of a 1 year experience is much more um, important and effective than those smaller kind of programs that you might be a part of. So this is like one huge thing, the overall change in perspective. Another big thing which I actually saw the day I actually came in and joined my host organization. So I was working with Ashoka's youth venture. I had heard about Ashoka, I had heard about different organizations out here. But just working in that organization, I thought it'll just be like another non-profit, similar to some of the big non-profits in India. But it was totally different. The way they operate, the way non-profits out here operate in DC, at least, I would say, it's so professional. It's so different than how non-profits operate in India. They're like things go on in a right way. They are structured. They are much more like corporate sector firms, and they are operating very similar way. Just that they're doing social impact work, it doesn't mean that they can relax. So it's like you still have that kind of push and professionalism in the sector which we found in US. At least for my learning, I want to take that back to India and like see the non-profit sector in India so professional, so very experienced, which is not really right now the situation in India. The talent doesn't come down. So one of the things is in India, talent doesn't come down and work with non-profits. I want to see that happening. So that's another thing. Plus, working out here, I was mostly involved in project management and different kinds of technology projects. I experienced working with remote teams, which was like a totally different experience. We used to have calls earlier, conference calls and all those things. But this time was the first time when I experienced working 50% of my time with a remote team. My supervisor was based out of LA, which is the other side of the country. My other teammates were in New York. Some of them were in other countries, and I used to have calls with them. It really takes time to understand how do you work with these remote teams and how do you make that bonding over phone, which doesn't happen normally. So having that kind of a learning was like a really good experience. Probably the world is moving towards that as technologies improve and like distance is shortened down. People would be doing that a lot more. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was the third thing which I really learned was growing myself personally. Staying with all different kinds of people, and also professionally growing myself as a leader. I used to lead a small non-profit back in India, working with them, trying to see how we can most effectively utilize different resources and to like really bring out that impact. But coming out here, it was more like learning on those personal skills and social skills which not only help you personally but also professionally. Something like talking to people. I used to do it, but I wasn't that good at it. I used to think, but it wasn't happening that strategically. How do you connect with people at a much personal level, and how do you take that bonding to a professional level? So being out here, being a part of these different fellowships, attending different conferences, just gave me a better view of how do you connect with all these people and what role does this play in a bigger relationship going further. So developing these small kinds of skills probably helped me a lot. Obviously coming out here, meeting people from different countries, having friends all across the globe, being in India, that was not possible. I really admire being with all of you, understanding your culture, and now I can really proudly say I have like at least one or two friends in like every continent. So if I travel internationally, I can always call them, message them, and say, "Hey guys, I'm coming. Be ready." So be ready and be careful. But that's where you move from being a national perspective to a much global citizen. So I feel that's what Atlas Core is all about, giving and bringing out your whole perspective to a global level, and I think I'm going to do something really good once I'm back in India. Thank you.
Yatin Sethi was a 2008-2009 Atlas Core Fellow from India.